think, is I'm going to do a little presentation on portfolios. I'm going to mostly be talking about writing portfolios, but portfolios can be a number of different things. So when I'm done talking, Sean's going to talk about digital portfolios, a different kind, same concept, but with multimedia and web page stuff instead of just Microsoft Word documents. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right, so stuff that I'm going to cover is right here. First of all, I guess I just want to talk about, we're going to talk about classroom portfolios. In other words, what you do in your individual class. Some people have been around long enough that they participated in our portfolio assessment, which is going, I think, 5 or 6 years ago. And that was us meeting and taking portfolios from our class and sharing it with people who weren't in our class, which was an interesting process, but we're not talking about that here. We're only talking about portfolios that you use and you read in your class. So what is a student portfolio? Basically, when we're talking about portfolios, what we mean is an alternative to just reading a paper. So normally you would read a paper, you would give feedback to a paper, you would grade a paper. So portfolios are an alternative to just papers. A portfolio is a collection of student work. Typically, it's a collection that you would collect at the end of the semester. So what you're looking at in the portfolio has been revised, has gotten feedback, has been worked on over the semester, and it's being submitted to a portfolio for an end of semester grade. You can specify what kind of work you want to be in the portfolio. You can say, oh, we did a paper where we analyzed a text. That has to be in the portfolio. Or you can say everything in the course has to be in the portfolio, or you can let students choose which things to put into the portfolio. That's all up to you. The portfolio is simply a collection that you assess at the end of the semester. Most of the time, portfolios are work that has been revised over the entire course of the semester, and much of the time, a portfolio will include a reflective piece where you ask students to tell the story of what happened as they revised their work, or to have some insight into what happened over the semester. So why should you use a portfolio instead of doing what teachers have always done, which is, grade individual papers? Well, there are some answers to that. There's some reasons that a portfolio is useful. One is they're just better assessment tools than individual papers. You will get a better sense of the work that student is doing and what they're capable of and what their strengths and weaknesses are when you're reading a collection instead of an individual paper. And that kind of makes sense, right? The more you see in context, the better picture of that student's work that you have. Another reason to use a portfolio is it really emphasizes revision. If you're collecting pieces at the end of the semester, that really sends a message to students that the piece isn't entirely done until they turn it in to their portfolio. So it really emphasizes revision, which is something we really want to emphasize in this course. And then the third reason is if you're asking students to choose pieces to put into an end of semester portfolio, that really does provide an excellent opportunity to look back at what they've done over the class. And it encourages to think of them, it encourages them to think of writing as a process that goes on rather than just a collection of papers. I do this paper, I turn it in, then I'm done with it, then I move on to something else and I've forgotten entirely everything that went into that paper. By asking them to submit and collecting the work at the end of the semester, you're really giving them an opportunity to look back and talk about what they've done over the semester. And writing theorists agree that that's really the key to students learning and transferring what they've learned to the next semester. One final reason to use portfolios is that you can build in choice to a portfolio, and choice is really important to students, right? So if you allow them to say, maybe if you do 4 writing projects over a semester and you say to students, pick 2 or 3 of them to put in your portfolio, you're allowing them to decide their best work. What is it that they want to be assessed on? That's useful because it means that they can make a decision, this paper didn't work out. I'm not going to put that in the portfolio, which means that they can do things and take risks and see how things turn out, while at the same time knowing if it doesn't go like they planned, they don't have to include it in the portfolio. It also can ask them to do a little critical thinking. I have conferences towards the end of the semester where I talk about what students are putting in their portfolios. And then they have to sort of think, well, these are 2 different papers. Which is my best work? Which should I put in the portfolio? Which is, encourages a certain level of reflection that's really useful to students making decisions about their writing. So those are a bunch of reasons that I think portfolios are useful. But I often get a lot of questions about grading, because grading a portfolio rather than grading individual papers really is a different process, both for students and also for teachers. And I want to emphasize here that you have a lot of options in how you decide to build portfolios into your course grading process. This is the option that I use, which is sort of high stakes grading, or at least I guess I'm choosing to base most of my grade on that final portfolio. In one way, that's high stakes because all of the grade is based on this portfolio. But in another way, it's actually kind of low stakes because I'm giving students the entire semester to turn in drafts and get feedback and talk about their work. And I'm saying, I'm not going to grade you on the middle of the process. I'm only going to grade you on the end of the process. But if you do defer that grade until the final portfolio, you do need to build in little checkpoints throughout the semester. So if you were going to base your grade on the final portfolio, I do a couple things. When students submit drafts, I don't grade those drafts, but I do kind of try to let the students know where they are in the process. So I'll say, no, this draft, it's 50 words, not 400, or it's not on the right topic, or it's scrawled on the back of a cocktail napkin. No, this doesn't count. You need to resubmit this. Or I'll say in progress, which is, it's nice. There's some interesting things here that I want to talk to you about, but it's not ready. You've still got more revision to do. Don't think that you're done yet. Or I might put portfolio ready, which in my class means it's sort of B-level work or better, which means that's pretty impressive. And you could even submit this into the portfolio without revising, and you'd probably be okay. But it doesn't mean it's as good as it can be. There's probably more that you could do to make it even better. So I give them that sort of rough sense with each draft that they turn in to me. And I also have conferences, one in the beginning of the semester where we just check in and maybe talk about a writing project and how they're doing. But I also have a conference at the end of the semester where I say, okay, here's where you are and here's what you need to do in order to submit your final portfolio. This paper seems ready. This paper does not seem ready yet. And in that end of the semester conference, if they really want me to put a grade on their work, I'll try to make a rough estimate of what I think they're doing so far. Although I want to point out, most of them actually do not ask for that. So that's one way of grading. Another way of grading, if you're feeling, or your students are feeling that that leaves too much uncertainty until the end of the semester, you can do a trial run portfolio. And people who were in our portfolio system years ago, in our portfolio assessment system, we used a trial run. So that means around the middle of the semester, you ask for like a mini portfolio. Maybe it's just one project and a little process piece, a little reflective letter. In a sense, that's not really a portfolio because you're only looking at one piece, but it's a good way of telling your students what your end of semester standards are. So you do this trial run portfolio, you read through them pretty quickly, and you can, what we did when we did it as a program is we just said pass or no pass. But you could do that, or you could give it a grade. If you're giving it a grade, you still have other options. You can count that grade as part of your final course grade if you want. You can give a grade that's provisional, in the sense that you're counting it. Okay, you got a C on this, but I'll reassess this grade and replace it with a higher grade if you do better at the end of the semester. Or you can just say, this is a grade that I would give it, but it doesn't count at all. You've got a lot of different options in how you assess this trial run midterm portfolio. So a third option, I've actually never done this or known anybody to do it, but this does strike me as an option, is that you can sort of divide the semester into 2 mini semesters. And you do a lot of revision on a couple of projects in the first half of the course, and then you ask for a portfolio and you give it a grade, and it counts as whatever it counts as, let's say 50%. And then you go to the second half of the semester, and it's like beginning a new semester. You can say, oh, we're going to work on some new projects, and there's going to be a portfolio at the end of this semester. And maybe in the second half, maybe you allow them to carry one of their original pieces forward, but then you require maybe some more revision, like maybe it's a different genre, or maybe it's more developed. And then you have a portfolio at the end of the second midterm, at the end of the semester, and then you end up with 2 separate grades. So dividing the semester in 2. That has the advantage of giving them a definitive grade in the midterm and at the end, but it clearly has some disadvantages. You've got less time in each 8-week period to do revision, and you have less work to look at for each of those halves of the semester. But it is theoretically, at least, it is a possible way of doing portfolios. And then finally, option 4, and I know Sean does this, so maybe he can speak to it later in the workshop. You can just count the portfolio as one part of the semester grade and weight it however you want to weight it. So maybe it's half of the grade, maybe it's a third of the grade, however you decide to weight it. So you're grading other things during the semester. Maybe you're grading individual papers, but then at the end of the semester, you require a portfolio, and that's going to be an additional grade. So if you do this, if you are grading papers or grading drafts or grading anything else during the semester, and you're using a portfolio as an additional part of your semester grade, you're going to need to specify what your requirements are for the portfolio, because there's no point in doing a portfolio if students are just turning in papers that they've already done. So you'll need to say, okay, I gave you a B on that paper back in March, but now you're revising it for the final portfolio. And when I'm looking at it in the final portfolio, I'll expect to see additional revision on top of that. So all of that may sound good. I hope all that sounds good to you, but you may be asking, portfolios, you mean I'm looking at a bunch of papers at the very end of the semester, and I'm teaching multiple sections, and this sounds like a lot of work to me. So if you're feeling that, I want to give you some reassurance. I have found that doing portfolios is no more work and possibly less work than grading papers. And that's for a couple of reasons. For one thing, I don't give almost any feedback to the final portfolios that I get. And in fact, even if you didn't use portfolios, I would really urge you not to give much feedback at the end of the semester. Students won't look at it. If they do look at it, it's not going to do them any good. Don't give feedback when revision is done. Only give feedback when it's going to be useful, which means when students are going to revise become of it. So when I read through those portfolios, I read through them very quickly. I might jot down a note or two, and if I give feedback, it's maybe just a couple of sentences. Or maybe if I'm giving the portfolio a failing grade or a bad grade, maybe I'll give a paragraph of feedback just because I need to justify that grade, but I really don't spend much time with it. And the other thing is, I don't, it's easier to grade a portfolio than it is to grade a paper. Often I'll agonize about whether to give a paper an A- or a B+, but when I'm reading a portfolio, I'm not actually grading every paper in the portfolio. I'm just grading the portfolio. And it's amazing how much easier it is to get a picture of what students are doing when you've got more than one paper. And then finally, and this I find is the biggest reason that grading portfolios is easier than grading papers, is students are only including work in the portfolio that they've worked on over the entire semester. And when we conference before the portfolio, we talk about where are you with these writing projects. So by the time I'm reading the portfolio, I've seen these papers multiple times before. They're not new writing for me. And so it's really easier for me to go through the portfolio pretty quickly because I already have the conversation in my mind about where the student has been with this writing. And I'm just looking through it pretty quickly to see how much it's progressed from the last draft and how I want to assess it. So it's much easier. I spend a lot less time on the portfolios. Where I spend my time is giving feedback in March when I'm looking at a mid-process draft and I'm trying to help the student revise it further. For the portfolio, I'm not doing that, so it's a lot quicker. So the final thing is, well, what should you tell students about portfolios? And it really is important to explain in your syllabus how the portfolio is being used and how it's going to be graded. I don't spend a lot of time in the syllabus because students don't tend to read syllabi. But for accountability's sake, you should say something about the portfolio. And you may need to come back to it. You will need to come back to it several times over the semester to emphasize it. But that's just here's the paragraph down there that I say in my syllabus explaining that they're going to be working on all of these writing projects over the semester, that over the semester they're going to get feedback from me and feedback from classmates. And then at the end of the semester, they're going to be revising these pieces for the portfolio, emphasize that they have to be revised. And for me in my class, I say they can't submit a really bad, they've got to, I have other things in my class that pull their grade up. So I simply tell them, in spite of these other bonuses that pull their grade up, they can't get less than a C- on the portfolio in order for them to pass the class. And of course, they need to get at least a C in your class anyway to pass the class. It is important to emphasize to your students, if you're using a final portfolio, that they're not going to be done with a paper because students are really used to just doing one paper at a time and then forgetting about it and moving on. So even in my syllabus, I'm trying to build in this expectation that this is not going to be a course where they write a paper and then they're done. And then they write another paper and then they're done. I really need to emphasize that the class will be working on multiple projects all the way through the semester. And I need to emphasize that not only in my syllabus, but throughout the class, because it's simply not a way of looking at writing that students are used to. That's my information. I'm going to toss it back to Sean, who's going to extend this discussion into a different kind of portfolio, which is a digital portfolio. And then we're going to have a time at the after Sean's presentation to do questions and answers and to talk about what portfolios might look like in your class. And Sean, you're muted.
I'm in now, yeah?
Yep.
Good. All right. So I'm going to show you guys two things that I am doing this semester, two kinds of digital portfolios that I'm using now. One I've used a long time, one I'm using in some ways for the first time now. I'm going to go quickly. I'm going to show you quickly how I scaffold some of these things. That was some questions that were raised before. And I'm going to show you some examples of some website portfolios at the end. Because I'm going to go really fast. When we did this yesterday, some people said, hey, that was too fast, Sean, and we'd like to talk more about that. And if anybody wants to talk more, we can set up a teaching circle or we can go over anything as we all start thinking about how we're transitioning on to the fall. But let me share it now and I'll start to show you. Okay, so I'll start here. So here is my, this is my business writing class. And so here's my portfolio. It has 3 parts. So this is a digital portfolio I teach in classroom. And so the audience for this is really, in one sense, is really me. In that sense, it's an old-fashioned portfolio. But because one piece is a resume and a rhetorical analysis, that is going to look toward a lot of outside audiences. And the other one is a LinkedIn account. And so that's looking at outside audiences right away. And so let me just show you how I got to the LinkedIn account, which was new. I haven't done this before this semester. So back in week 10, I gave them some LinkedIn videos, and these were just stock off the LinkedIn site videos about how to get started on LinkedIn. Some of these students already had LinkedIn accounts, some of them did not. And so this was step one. Everybody watched some of these short videos and did an informal reading response to them. Then, as part of my learning process too, I interviewed a CEO and I got her advice, and we turned that into a YouTube video. Here we go. So thank you so much for agreeing to talk to me and the students at William Patterson University about ways to add power to their LinkedIn accounts. So Myra has 16 pieces of advice that we comb through as we go through the 14-minute video. So they also did a response to that. So that was the next step. Then they went into, we keep group class notes in a Google Doc. So everybody went in their teams and they had discussion, they found their own sources and talked about them together for tips they came up with for how to make a good LinkedIn account. Then they did the rough draft. They connected to me on LinkedIn so I could see their profile. And then this is the model I gave them for the rhetorical outline. And so they identified a bunch, whatever they wanted to tell me about, the features of the site that they either have or they want to use, what they say, what they're going to say, and then the arguments that they saw in those. And so that was that's how we've teed all of this up. Then they did a peer review of their rough draft sites. And so we did this just a simple love more ad, but it's all in one big chart. So everybody can see everybody else's sites. They started to connect to each other. So they're building their connections in LinkedIn and offered each other some advice. And so from that point now, they should be ready to go to the final. This is the assignment for the portfolio version. So here's a link back to that video again. This time I tell them the 16 elements I want, which are the same exact elements from Myra's video, and to guide them to see which they have done, which they haven't done, why they haven't, why they have, and the arguments that they think their version of the LinkedIn profile is making for them. So that's one way to do a portfolio. This is worth 30% of their final grade.
I'm sorry, can I interrupt just because I want to make sure I'm understanding this?
Sure.
That you're talking, the specific assignment is a rhetorical analysis of a LinkedIn profile.
Well, I also put a grade on the LinkedIn profile. So half of it is the LinkedIn profile.
Okay. I guess my question is, like, are these elements of your digital portfolio? Like what are these things that go into the digital portfolio at the end of the semester?
The LinkedIn profile lives in LinkedIn, right? It's a real profile on LinkedIn. So it's over there. The rhetorical analysis is a chart, and I put it into Classroom so they each get their own copy of the chart and then just have to fill it in. And that's how they do the rhetorical analysis. So the profile is 5% of the final grade. The analysis is 5%. The resume is 5%. The revised resume, the rhetorical analysis of the resume is 5%. And then they also are doing a career plan memo to file, and that's 10%. And so this portfolio.
Are these things part of the final portfolio?
Yes, but there is no physical place other than this assignment, right? You put two of them in here in this assignment. You put something in here in this assignment, and you put the last piece in here in this assignment, right? So there is no one place where they gather like a website. This is much more like a portfolio might look like in Blackboard. You say there's 3 pieces to portfolio, put one here, put one here, put one here. But it's not just, it's a little different from an old idea of a process portfolio, because we're very much having to think about real world audiences for at least 2 of these pieces, the resume and the LinkedIn account. Is that what you're asking me, Chris?
I think so, just because when I say portfolio, and I know you're going to show us some portfolios later, when I say portfolio, I am thinking something that exists at the end of the semester as a sort of capstone, and it's a collection of items. And I was just trying to understand if these items that you were showing us were items in those final portfolios.
Right. So that's a great point. So when you start to think about portfolios as digital, they could all be on one platform, curated together, or they could be in separate places. And in that case, the only place they're sort of curated here in my Google Classroom, but really they exist separately, these pieces. And I'll say that, so this is 30%. And so in all my classes, I do lots and lots of grades. And so they will get grades from the first week. Join our classroom, find your way into Google Classroom, that's a grade. You get into Google Classroom, you get an A. And so I'm following the ABC advice of the school. I try to give lots of grades so people follow along. Chris is a Zen master teacher we have taught together, and he doesn't have to give grades because every student in his class feels completely safe all the time. And he gives them amazing feedback, and they have a great creative conversation. I'm not as good at that as he is, and so I give a lot of grades, and I give grades. However, when we do a first draft of something, the grade pretty typically is, show me a first draft. You know, I want this about this many words, or I want to see a rough draft of this. I want to see that you did it. I want to see that it's up wherever it is we're working. Good, you did that, you have an A. In a middle draft, I want to see you did global revision. I don't care about editing yet because we don't edit in second drafts. I want to see your thesis. Do you have a good, solid thesis? Are you organizing, reorganizing your piece? And that way, and that lets me put grades on earlier drafts because I'm not I'm not looking at anything as a finished product until we get to the portfolio. And sometimes even in the portfolio, they're not a finished product. So for example, in this case, this memo to file, the audience for a memo to file is you. So even now, I don't care if their career plan memos are pretty, are finalized, or perfect, because it's a working document. It's a writing to learn document that's for their own benefit. So what I care about in there is the critical thinking and the effectiveness of the plan that they're developing. So in that way, each piece sort of gets its own assessment plan, I guess. So a more conventional digital portfolio is here. This is my 1500 class. And so here, final portfolio, this is going to website portfolio. And let me see, so that's I'll jump ahead. So how do I scaffold the portfolio? So back in week 13, none of my students had ever made a website before. And so here's how we started. We said, okay, in class, what do you do with a new digital tool? What do you do if you're trying to figure out something new? The answer is, just like Chris was saying in the beginning when we were talking, you Google it, go find some credible sources, see what you find that helps you. So we found this. And this, after we got through all of the ads that tried to steer us into one particular site. So here's a real site that's actually evaluating 15 options. Top 2, Weebly and Wix, and that's what most of the students will choose. Then we play with 2 of them in class. Everybody picks any 2 and plays with them for 15 minutes. Then I talk them through how to make sure that they can go all the way from starting to play with it to publishing a shell of a site for free without falling into any of the traps where they'll get charged money, and make sure that they're getting the free version, not the paid version. And that gets us to a first draft of the website. Here's their first draft link. All I need when I look at this is I see that it goes to their actual website, that the link works. They're going to be empty. They haven't put in any of the content yet, but they have often taken some initial steps. They've cleared out some of the stock content. They've put in their headings. They've renamed their buttons, and they've gotten started. Once they've done this and everybody has figured this out, I know we're not going to have any tech problems. So here, this is again, does your site open? Does it take me to a website? If it does, you get an A. And then from there, we move to the portfolio. So here's the whole portfolio assignment. This portfolio has 3 pieces. It has a movie essay, which would be in a 3rd or a 4th draft. It has a revised text essay, and here they can choose from two. They've written 2 drafts of 2 essays, so they're going to pick one for the portfolio. And there's a reflection essay, and so in this case, not everything is something that they revised, because the reflection essay is a 1 draft essay. They're only making it for the portfolio. And so the pink here is when we talked about it, they gave me some more notes about what it should be in the assessment. So we changed that to add in their ideas, some good notes. And then what do we do with the website? How do I grade the website? And the answer is no one loses points for the website. It's a creative exercise. It helps to unlock a different kind of energy and think about composing in a different way. But if you have a website and it clicks and I can find the pieces on it, you're good. However, if you make a great website, you add extra content, you do a really good job, it really looks clean and professional, then I'm going to give you extra credit. Then I'll tag right onto your final grade. So there's an incentive to spend a little time on the website if that's your thing and if you have time to do it in the busy end of the semester.
Sean, I want to ask a clarifying question.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm hearing you say is that everybody has to have a website.
Mm-hmm.
But once they have a website, they're good. They're not going to lose any grades from the work that they've already done. They can only gain grades for creativity once they have the website. But the website is a requirement.
Yeah. So, and remember, they all already have it. We made it already. All of these, every one of these links works. So the whole class has a website already. So I know that they're safe. No one's going to get stuck there. And they're just going to give me that same link in the portfolio because the link's not going to change. But when I look at it in the portfolio, the content should be in it. And if the content's not in it, then comes the question of how we deal with students who are struggling to complete the work at the end of the semester. But here, everything does go into one platform. It goes into their website. And so let me go back to, when they get to the final version of the movie, here's the thing I wanted to just show you guys. I always ask this. I have asked it for about 7-8 years now. Can I share this? Are you choosing to make it public? And can I share it? If you say yes here, I might share it this year, next year. I might share it in 5-6 years until I see that you've taken it and changed it to private, or you've taken it down, which you can always do because these are their YouTube accounts. Many students keep them up for some time. And a few students have kept them up now for 8 years and counting since I first started making them. And I do the same thing with the portfolio. So in the portfolio assignment, not the assignment, but here's the chart. They give me the link again. And I ask them again, can I share your website? And so here, yes means yes. If they don't fill it in, or they say no, or I get maybe, then I don't share those. But if they tell me yes, and they've made their website public, then I will share it like I'm about to share with you. So what do the websites look like? Here's one from 2014. This was a Hunter student. And so here's her research. She did a research project, a study of Burkean rhetoric, an idea from Burkean rhetoric as measured by the way her classmates decorated their dorm rooms. And so here's her formal study. These are the tables of her data. Here's some images that she collected as part of the study. And then she boiled that down into a 3-minute movie where she used the study to figure out Burke, and she used Burke to figure out what she found in the study. I'll just give you the first few seconds of it.
In a world of chaos and confusion, we all struggle to identify ourselves. One man explains it all. Kenneth Burke claims that the purpose of identification is persuasion. It's a form of rhetoric. We align one another's interests and establish a connection between oneself and others. This persuasion is done through consubstantiality. That's identification through common substance or the properties of which an object or group or person is composed.
So you get the idea. So she's tackling a really hard idea there. And nonetheless, because it's a movie, she can do it in a really playful, fun way. She can make fun of Burke with the crazy photos and the overly dramatic music. And so she even gave it a fun title, Kenneth Burke's Theory of Identification Dorm Edition. And now she's going to jump to a different song and start showing us what's going on in the dorm rooms. So that gives you a sense of what you can do when you're working in different genres. So there's none of that playfulness in her formal academic study, but it's right here in the movie of a version of the same thing. All right, so the rest of these are going to be, I have to move us down a little so I can get at my links. The rest of these are going to be WPU students. So here's Bria, and now this is a class that I co-taught with Chris, and it's an 1100 class. So this is a very standard template that a lot of students use because it has great buttons and it has these big double buttons. So it's really easy to navigate in and out of her site and find everything that she wants. She hasn't done that much to build out the site, but still you can feel her personality come through right away, even with just the great image. The essays themselves, she has just done as single pages. And yeah, research study. But now her movie, I loved her movie. So she did a study that was interview study of how Black women are socialized into feeling less than others. And then she completely reimagined it for the movie, which she did a reading of a Regina Rivers piece over a slideshow with music. And so it's just 3 elements, but see.
They constantly attempt to construct who we are, but it's through a negative light. What I call self-defense, they call belligerent and quick to fight. If we hold our heads upright with confidence and positive idiosyncrasy, we are perceived as haughty and we behave selfishly. I'm neither above nor below anyone here, but in myself I do take sufficient pride. I refuse to besmirch my character for their sake and have them make profits on the side. My place in society I'm taught by force, and this we all know well. Everyone else has the freedom to do as they please, but when a Black woman does her own thing, all are quick to run and tell. This country.
So that goes on from there. It's a very powerful piece. Here is Abdu. So this is a student of mine. He was placed into basic writing. He was supposed to be unable to do 1100. And he made this amazing portfolio of work. And so he's using the same template, but look what he's done. He has voluntarily added a whole extra page where he wrote a poem and did a slideshow of where he grew up in Bangladesh. Let me see, go back. It's locking me out of the things. I'll go away. Oh, it's kind of trapping me here. So I'm just going to go to Sylvester. So here's Sylvester. He was also a 1080 student. Here he is with his dog. His essay started out as his first essay started out why I love my dog, but he took it to a lot deeper place. Should the banning of pit bulls be allowed? Turned it into a research study. But then he did a much more serious study of the negative influences on the lives of teenagers in Atlantic City, where he interviewed 5 gang members in Atlantic City and talked about how their lives had been really destroyed by the time they had reached their late teens and early 20s. And so that he turned it also into a movie. And so a very powerful movie again.
Growing up in Atlantic City wasn't the easiest thing to do. My hometown is a place where kids' hopes get cut short again and again, until all they feel is hate. When students strive to strengthen their talents, but school doesn't push them, and where violence and gangs are more looked up to than teachers.
My friends just told me that's what everybody was doing, so I listened to them.
So you get a sense of this. It goes on like this. So he envisioned this as a PSA. His audience for this are young people and families, parents, and it's a warning about the risks they're facing and trying to steer them away from that life. Now this last one is a little more recent. So this is a portfolio in my 1500 class last year. And so this one is a different style, right? So the mobile uses of of the internet have blown up. So this one is mobile friendly. So all of her, she has a small home section that's just this spooky image, because we're a horror themed section. And then she has all of her portfolio is here in a scroll. So this is really easy to read and watch on a phone or a tablet. And so her movie is about unreliable narration in Joker.
Today I'm going to be analyzing the movie The Joker to see if the narrator, Arthur, is truly a reliable or an unreliable narrator. First, let's discuss what a narrator really is. A narrator is an individual who uses written or spoken language to convey a story of events or experiences. Sometimes we don't necessarily think of characters in movies as narrating.
All right, and so she goes from there to discuss how she feels like there is a character who's narrating much of Joker, and so what we see is unreliable in the movie. So overall, I think of my portfolios as, I'll stop the share now. I think of my portfolios, we start with portfolios as sort of an assessment tool. It filled the spot of midterms, it filled the part of final exams. But to me, the portfolios are part of my digital composing unit in my classes. So we're thinking about going out. We're really thinking about the kind of audiences we reach in the real world when we're on YouTube, when we're in websites, when we're on LinkedIn. And that is a way to sort of try to bridge the work back out to the classroom and reconnect with what they are really working on in the real world. So
Sean, I would just add, looking at that the second day in a row, you're talking about digital portfolios as really helping the students think about audience, because they are reaching an audience beyond the classroom. But as I look at those portfolios, one of the things that strikes me is that when students revise work in different media, or take even just written print work that they've done, but arrange that print work in a web format, it just feels to me like it helps the students see their own work differently. It makes them see it in a different context. And so often students just write a paper and then they're done with it. And that these web portfolios really get them to think about their work a second time in a way that just regular Word portfolios do not.
right, and so and it's because no one would want to do 5 or 6 drafts of an essay. Their heads would explode. But if they make an essay about the same thesis as and then the movie, in essence, they are doing 6 drafts of it. And very often we will see that the movie across time, their thinking develops across every draft, whether it's a text draft or a movie draft. And in the end, they've taken both things to a new place that was different from where they started. Yeah, that's right, Chris.
Should we do the chat storm?
Well, I don't know. You want to ask, or you want to? I guess we're small enough that we really are kind of a group. So, all right. So what we thought we would do is we'd try out a thing that we're calling Chat Storm. And so Zoom pedagogy, here we go. So I'm going to ask you guys, we want to know your questions and change this out to a conversation. So let's start by hearing what's on everybody's mind. So don't hit send. Write a question into the chat to send to everybody, but don't hit send yet. And once everybody's ready, we'll do 3, 2, 1 and drop them all into the chat together.
So if you're not Zoom veterans, the chat box is on the menu at bottom of the screen.
Yeah, if you hover at the bottom of the screen, you'll see chat next to participants. And that'll open up a chat screen for you.
Yeah, and it should say to everyone. Make sure that before you hit send, make sure you're sending it to everyone, not to a particular individual.
Everybody ready? Jill is still struggling to get in. She's coming back again. Hey, Jill, I hope you're getting in okay. We're about to just do some question and answer stuff. All right, so here we go. 3, 2, 1, send.
So if people are still typing, that's fine. Keep doing that. You can hit submit. But Sean, let's start it on these. I wanna respond to Michelle's question. She writes, I'm leaning towards assigning 2 separate portfolios. Is it appropriate to assign just one paper portfolio per portfolio? And I think my response would be, you could do that. And if you're doing a midterm portfolio and an end of term portfolio, that I guess makes sense. The only thing I would say is portfolios are more useful if you've got more than one document in them. You're really trying to paint a bigger picture than one document. So if you were going to do 2 different portfolios, I would say see if you can work in something other than a paper. Maybe it could be a reflective piece. It could be an example of feedback. And then maybe for your second portfolio, if you're doing one at midterm and one at the end, I might suggest that at the end you have a paper that they've worked on for the second half of the semester. But maybe in addition to that, you say, take a paper that you worked on in the first part of the semester and do some revision of that. And that could be making it longer. It could be, revision can be so many things. It could be maybe asking them to do an interview and integrate that interview. So if the person's writing about college sports, maybe you could say, who could you interview? Could you interview an athlete? Could you interview a coach? And work that into the piece so that it becomes kind of a new piece for the final portfolio. Or maybe Sean looked at a piece that your student wrote about his dog, which was a personal piece. But then for the portfolio, he revised that piece to be a research or argumentative paper about why there are too many restrictions on pit bulls. So I think the thing about a portfolio is it provides this opportunity to re-see something that you've already done. So I would encourage you to think about ways that you could work that in so the student isn't doing an entirely from scratch piece, but maybe that revision allows the final portfolio to be looking at 2 pieces of writing instead of just 1 piece of writing.
So Chris, are you saying don't do reflective essays?
Far be it from me to say that. The reflective essay certainly could be yet another piece in the portfolio. I think I'm very much a fan of reflective essays, even though I struggle with them, and I feel like that's another teaching workshop. But I do think that the portfolios are such an opportunity for reflection that even if students don't do it well, and even if you're not, like you said, Sean, that reflective piece is your only one draft piece, so you don't judge it as critically as you would judge a revised piece. But even asking them just to take a little bit of time to reflect, whether or not they produce a wonderful reflective piece, that's a really good opportunity to do something that writing theorists say is really important to carrying over what students have learned.
So Kathy wants to know about getting people motivated and excited. We talked about 2 portfolios. Mark, it's more of an observation that he's done a lot of multimodal hard copy portfolios. Deborah is interested, but not really, not a real question. Deborah, do you have a question? And so far, something to talk about now? You're muted. You just you just want to unmute yourself. Here, I'll ask you to unmute.
Okay. I had a question about the link, building the LinkedIn site, and Chris sort of touched on it. When building the website, making the website, that was the first level of that platform, and they get a grade for it, correct?
Right. So this is a business writing class. It's a 3,000 level class. But yes, it's not a website because it's a LinkedIn profile. So technically, it's a web page on a social media site, right?
Okay. And so if they did nothing more than that, say they got 10 points just for the link, and they did nothing more, that's going to be their grade if they do nothing more. But with everything else that they build in, it gives them another level of points.
Well, so they did that one in 2 drafts. So in draft 1, they connect to me, and if it was a completely empty shell, it'd still be full credit because they're in LinkedIn, they're connected to me, they have an account. So it's Rob Greco yesterday, he called this a proof of concept grade. So in a first draft of a website, a first draft of a movie, first draft of a link, a social media account that you want them to have, you just say, do you have it? Does it work? Does it click? Can I connect to it? If it does, you're going to get either almost all the points or all the points. And then, but then in the portfolio version, my intention, this is the first time I'm doing this with LinkedIn, is I am going to grade the quality. So if I see now it's an empty LinkedIn profile with no photo, no banner, no content loaded into it, they're going to have a hard time explaining in the rhetorical analysis why they've done a great job making powerful arguments for themselves to employers and recruiters. And I mean, I know none of them are going to do that. They are already all working on it. They are building it. And so I'm not squinting too close at it, but because I really, what I want them to do, my teaching goal is to get them to understand that the LinkedIn accounts, like resumes, make powerful arguments, including good and bad implied arguments about you. And once they are able to tease out those arguments, then they can keep making new, better resumes and new, better LinkedIn accounts forever, long after they've left me behind. So that's why I have the whole big rhetorical analysis chart, and we talk a lot in that class in business writing about implied arguments.
Okay.
Kathy's question is about, the fact that you showed great portfolios and that were clearly written by motivated students. And so I feel like the implied question there is like, what about the rest of them?
Is there implied argument?
I think that's a really
argument in that question, Keith? Chris, maybe. Do you doubt Kathy? I'd say so. I think that's a bigger question, really, right? I think that's true at teaching at every level and every course. How do you get people motivated, and how do you get them excited? And
yeah, but I think it is a bigger question, but I also sort of see it as a question that has a specific kind of weight for portfolios. If portfolios are the thing at the end, and I think there is a lot of justified anxiety about this that I think we should address. If portfolios are the final thing at the end, what do we do with the students who are falling, who miss pieces of that, who miss assignments, who don't get feedback, who don't do revision? And I think in some ways, Sean, you're responding to that with those charts, in that we build in a lot of places leading up to the final portfolio where they have to have a certain level of accountability and check-ins. But I feel like maybe that's a really good thing to talk about. How do we get students to that final portfolio?
Let's say I have a spring 1100 class. Say the hardest class to teach in the university, in my judgment. And I have a lot of really unmotivated students. So I think that is just a challenge from the first day of class all the way through the portfolio to keep people in and keep people engaged and not let them fall away. And so I do still think there's a bigger pedagogical answer to how do you do it. But to the narrower question of what do you when you do if the portfolio trick doesn't work. Now you've turned them in, the deadline has passed, and someone has either not given you one or they gave you one. It's supposed to be 3 pieces and there's only 1 piece in it. what do you do about that? And so this I think has to do with what your goals are as a teacher and what your priorities are. I will try to, because I ask my students to do a lot of work, and maybe a lot more work than they have to do in some other 1100 and 1500 sections. I try really hard to drag them across the finish line. And sure, some of them are not excited, but at this point, you have a lot of leverage at the end. You say, look, the semester's over in 3 days. So far, you're at an F or a D. Give me this. Give me one more thing. Rework this. Do this. Change this. Work on this. And then each thing brings up the points until we get to where they've had enough and they say, Sean, I'm not doing anything else, or we run out of time. And so I try to get everybody in as far as I can. In my 1500 class this semester, they're all going to do great. I don't think I'm going to have this problem with any of them. In my business writing class, there's going to be several taking it right to the last day of the semester, I think. Is that what you're asking me, Kathy? Did I get close?
Yes, yeah, you did. And Chris hit the nail on the head there. It's like, yeah, I mean, I'm motivated. Like, I want to be in your class and I want to make one of those websites, even though I don't know anything about technology. I mean, I could not even conceive of creating a class like that. But, and especially, I guess now too, it's so hard to have black boxes to talk to and black boxes that don't respond. And I think your projects are more motivating for that generation than mine might be. But I mean, I'm like I said in the beginning, I'm dragging a couple people across now. I hate to see somebody not succeed, to spend an entire semester and then not be able to show anything for it at the end. But but there are those students, for whatever reasons, who just don't. And there are a lot of reasons who don't participate, who don't do the projects. And they're the ones I worry about. They're the ones I worry about. So I would like to see some of the portfolios that didn't make the cut, but.
So see, this is interesting. I was thinking about that when Chris talked about his C- thing, and I was trying to search my memory. I think I've done 18 or sections of 1100 and 1500 now. And there has never been a student who gave me a portfolio that didn't pass the class. And so in 1100, I'm never giving anybody a C-. If you finish the semester with me and you turned in everything, you're going to get a C. I'm not making you take 1100 again. And so in 1500, you just need a D. And so I'm not giving you an F in 1500 if you stuck around and you did all the work. To me, to fail my first year writing classes, you have to opt out. You have to stop coming, stop turning in work. I'm not going to say, these last pieces didn't meet my minimum standard of whatever. And so, but then it's not like I'm, pure of heart. I get fussier about that when we get up to B and A. I do think about those things. And it's important.
I have to say, in my experience for 1100, the portfolios, and until the last couple of years of my teaching experience, nobody filled the portfolio. But the populations that I'm dealing with now are a little bit different. And so I do get some students who fail the portfolio. Mostly they fail the portfolio because the work's not been substantially revised. I get drafts in the portfolios that I should have gotten in the second month of class. They just haven't been revising. And what's been helpful for me is kind of reproducing versions of what Sean showed you with those charts and checklists. So I've created a portion of my website where they have 3 different writing projects they're working on, and they report. They have to check in every couple of weeks and update their progress. So have you submitted a draft yet? Yes or no. Have you gotten feedback from classmates yet? Yes or no. Have you taken a draft of the Writing Center yet? Yes or no. Have you developed a revision plan? Yes or no. Have I given you feedback to your revision plan? Yes or no. What's your next step? And they have to put in their next step. And it's a way of keeping this process of revising visible to them And then when we have a conference, I've just finished my second conferences. So a couple of weeks before the portfolio, we have conferences. And that's the document that they and I look at the conference. Let's look over this. Where are you? What can I tell you about it? And if I feel like they're in danger, I tell them. I say, I'm really worried about you. I've only seen one draft of this writing project. I won't accept a portfolio that only has one draft. You've got 2 weeks to get another draft done. What are you going to do about that? So it's at least a check-in point for that. And some of them have an answer to that and they do something about it. Oh, I'm going to get it to the writing center, or I'm going to send you a draft, whatever. And some of them don't, and some of them end up turning in a portfolio that, but it should not be a surprise to me or them. Nobody should fail the portfolio who I haven't already talked to and warned them that they're in trouble. That portfolio cannot come as a surprise to anybody. And I think that's really important, because if you don't build in that scaffolding and you haven't somehow let students know they're not meeting those expectations, then it's really unfair to them to hit them with a club at the end of the semester when you haven't been checking in with them.
So really, Chris, are you saying that in a way, it's sort of like saying for you that really they're opting out?
Yeah.
Right? They're not doing the course.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have a few more minutes. Let me see. Diana, you say, do I have detailed things about the movies and the websites? Yeah, I do, and I can share those with you. That I can walk you through the assignments and share them.
And she's also asking, do anybody like crap out and buy a portfolio at the end? And are you okay with that if they do? I mean, buy a platform.
No,
right?
no. I think she's asking, how do you make sure they don't fall into the trap? And there are a couple of very simple tricks that you have to answer certain questions the right way. Do you want to buy and sell products on your website? No. Do you want to have a specialized URL that doesn't say Wix or Weebly in it? No. And so if you answer, do we want to upgrade? No. If you answer all those questions right, when you click publish, your website will appear and there's no charge.
Sean, you're teaching them how to be good consumers on top of everything else.
Or I don't know. I'm hacking the system. They're not buying it.
Well, that's a way of teaching them to be good consumers.
Yeah. So, yeah. So, I don't know. So Mark, you mostly had a comment. Do you have a question or something you want to talk about a little?
Well, yeah, I was just wondering if other people have had that experience where one dimension is no longer sufficient. They've got their students doing so many different expressions, not only of writing, but what do we use to bring forth the writing art? Because we're also painting and going outside in the cold weather and tasting the snow and such, just anything that will us in a way. And I was wondering if anyone else steps outside the box of the portfolio to kind of kick their students in and go hiking. Because we like to write over at Manhattan Bagel, and they love to have us over there, like for the 1100. We can always get all the coffee we need as long as we're buying bagels. So, and we like the clatter and the clang of the environment sometimes. So every third week we go right in Manhattan Bagel just for the clang and the clattering of plates and all that, and the chatter around us. So I was wondering if anyone else is stepping outside the mold in any of those ways.
You all make me feel boring. My answer is no.
Well, yeah, we like it.
Well, I mean, I love the idea of the portfolio as a new thing, right? We get used to saying like papers, everything's a paper. The portfolio does offer that opportunity to bring together something new.
I had a couple students go on a field trip just last week down to John Bon Jovi's restaurant and to do an interview down there and explore it. And they wound up volunteering down there. So that was kind of cool. And then part of their final paper was to write that up. So that was really great experience for them.
One of the things about portfolios is they provide this opportunity for new audiences. And I want to point out that portfolios live on to different audiences in different ways. Sean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the Burkean portfolio that you used, Sean used that in an interview when he was interviewing for the job of professor at William Patterson, and he came to us and he wanted to show what could happen with digital composing, and he said, here's one of the things that we can do with digital composing, and he showed that video. So I don't know if your original student is aware of the many uses that portfolio has served, but one was to get you a job here.
Yeah. No, she does know. And she knows also that me and a student here have just written an article about the movies that lists a lot of these movies, including the cold movies. So I've been talking to all of these students back to 2014 in the last year, keeping up with them. I'm also connecting to a lot of them on LinkedIn this month, finding out where they are, what they're doing. Yeah, so I did the people, I think, Aditi, you were at, I don't know if you were really you were asking about just, are these projects working this semester rather than are the people staying connected after the semester? But a lot of students stay connected a little bit to you after the semester too, because they keep the projects up. Like in LinkedIn now, I'm connected to a bunch of them. They may knock me out after the semester's over, or we may stay connected. Then I'll see how they're doing.
About 10 years ago, I promised the students, and it was a technical writing course, but I promised them an art show, and I had to New York State to find a gallery that would host us. That was really we just trucked up there in mass, to see their stuff on display with other people viewing it and all that. That was really a high point of our days. It was wonderful.
So we were almost out of time, but I was, Aditi, was there something? Did you want to say more about your question?
Well, I just, my comment was that I really found, the project you presented inspiring, and, and it made me think exactly, how boring it was this semester and the previous semester to be every other day on Zoom staring at black boxes. And I wondered, and I know that the students felt the same. I mean, this is how they felt. So I thought, what if, they are in front of the computer anyway? It might have been probably so much better if I even thought about, having, making them to be engaged with technology while learning. So I wondered, were you teaching also on the Zoom, or were you actually in a physical place with students this semester? And if it was different during the pandemic, did it make a difference?
The 1500 class I showed you is a synchronous online class,
right?
So like what we're doing right now. And their engagement, they almost all have perfect attendance in the class so far. So they're really engaged. They're a great group. They're doing fantastic. The business writing class is an asynchronous online class. And that has been much more of a struggle because we were talking at the beginning, they just disappear. And I write them, I text them, I try to get them to come to voluntary study sessions. They don't want to come. And so I think we're going to do a lot more asynchronous classes in the future. And I think the challenges for us pedagogically are going to be interesting, because all these WP online classes that we're starting to develop are all asynchronous online classes. And so you really have to do a lot of things differently in those. And I think we're all collectively trying to figure that out.
I feel like for technology, for the in-person classes and maybe the synchronous classes, you can do a lot of hand-holding. If students go like, I don't know how to build a website, you can say, okay, well, let's all do that together. Let's try this out. Let's see what happens in ways that is hard to replicate in asynchronous classes. If I were to try something, and I would be more reluctant to do it in an asynchronous class, Like I do, Sean, you know, I do that video essay in my 1500s. I'd be a little afraid to try that in an asynchronous class. But if I were to do it, I think I would have to build in a lot of videos myself with me talking to the students saying, watch this video. I'm going to take you through these steps. Watch this video and then get back to me and maybe do a lot more conferencing. I just think you need to build. Hand-holding is a big part of technology, and I think I would have to think about how to build that hand-holding into an asynchronous class.
Right.
Sean, you mentioned the last time we did this workshop, something that I hope we follow through on in the fall, which is that the best way, you know, what is it like for us teachers who don't build websites? Like, how can we help students do this if we don't do it ourselves? And you'd mentioned, you know, maybe we should have a teaching circle in the fall where we all get together and do what your students do. Open Wix and Weebly and just try to make some really basic websites and then just share that with each other. So I'm hoping that that's something we'll be able to put together for the fall.
Well, I'll invite everybody. I think we have to do it in the summer if we're doing it for fall classes. But
yeah, I wasn't thinking about doing it for fall classes. I'm not that ambitious, but yeah. All right, we could do it during the summer.
I'd say, yeah, well, you know, so if this is all freaking you out and you're wondering, oh my God, this isn't so, like, I think it's a great use in playing. So like if you watch the video of the LinkedIn video that I made, my CEO friend has given me a makeover of my completely crappy LinkedIn account. And, you know, you did this well, this is terrible. You have 7 connections. That's no good. You need 500. And so I think you do want to dip your toe in. Go try to make a website on Wix or Weebly. I didn't know how to use iMovie on my phone. And so I made a little movie with my fish tank about a shrimp using my phone for 2 minutes and loaded it up just so I could, you know, learn the interface a little bit, enough to be able to talk with people who are making the movies on phones and iPads. And so, you know, you can play with the tools the same way. I don't think any of us have to be expert in any of them. If we are a little bit familiar with them, it's a lot of fun actually, because then what happens is you're learning with your students. You're really getting great two-way learning in you know, many-way learning in the classes. If everybody is trying to figure out LinkedIn together, that's a lot of fun to do. And the same thing for websites, movies, and whatever the next big tech thing comes along that we all have to deal with. So.
Any final questions, comments, or concerns?